A letter delivered by a former security official to the office where the FBI director should have been, or he thought would be. In fact, he was in Los Angeles. What does that tell you about how this happened?
Well, last night it was a flurry of very unexpected events that happened really quickly, but there was a lot of predicate events that happened before that. We know now from some of the reporting that Trump had spent about a week pondering this. He had been inveighing against TV screens about any Trump-Russia coverage. He had been tweeting quite frequently about his concerns about the bona fides of the investigation. And then he clearly decided to take action, as Trump does. He took action unilaterally and unexpectedly. Most of his team wasn't apparently pulled in or consulted on how to create a message around this. He sends his bodyguard with a pink slip to the FBI, but Comey wasn't there. So Comey ends up finding out about it on TV while he's addressing staffers in Los Angeles. And so here we are.
Eli, how seismic a move is this? You've written about how Mr. Comey was one of the most important men in Washington. What's changed as a result of this?
I mean, we're in new territory at this point because this has only happened once before, and at that time William Sessions was not investigating Bill Clinton. Ironically, his replacement, Louis Freeh, would end up spending most of his tenure investigating Clinton, and it was a decision that the Clinton White House would always regret. In this particular case, I think it's important to take a little bit of a deep breath. Comey is gone, but the investigation will remain, and we'll have to see who Trump nominates and selects to be the interim director, but also nominates to be his replacement. But at this point, those two things are not necessarily the same, and I think that some of the Watergate analogies I see are a little bit overwrought. But that said, this is an extraordinary move, and when I wrote a column 6 weeks ago saying that James Comey was the most powerful man in Washington, it was based on the assumption that after he announced an ongoing probe into the Trump campaign in Russia, that it would be politically suicidal to fire him at that point. I was wrong.
Megan Murphy, where do we go from here? It seems like there's smoke. We can debate the size of the fire. If it's a spark, conflagration, we'll see. What are the next steps going forward?
Well, I think just over the next sort of 12 hours, they're still going to be working to get their story straight, frankly. I mean, the New York Times revelation today that James Comey had asked for more resources for the Russia probe in the days leading up to this, that he'd actually made that request to Rod Rosenstein, the deputy AG, who was then tasked with sending this letter of recommendation that he be fired. I think it's still very interesting that even as they seek to get their ducks in the row, particularly among some leading Republican senators, whether that's Ted Cruz, whether that's Lindsey Graham, there still are major questions about this in terms of when was Rod Rosenstein asked to even look at this? Did Trump even ask him to look at this? How unilaterally was he acting, exactly as Tim is saying? I think there's still so many unanswered questions about this. The timing seems to be coming a little bit more into the picture. We have these new names in the frame, all career FBI people, but certainly not the level of name that is so known to the American public that is going to immediately restore trust and faith in that bureau. I think they're going to still be scrambling. I don't believe that they never imagined this sort of political conflagration. You'd have to be literally living in a parallel universe to not think that this was going to cause the type of reaction it has made. And I take Eli's point that some of the Watergate comparisons right now may be a bit overboiled. We will only find out in the days to come if they are exactly on pitch.
Tim, let me ask you about the optics of all of this. The president continued with the meeting.
Yeah.
He continued with his meeting. The only thing on his agenda today was meeting with the foreign minister from Russia.
Well, wasn't that timing wonderful?
Open the door to the Oval Office. There's Henry Kissinger, lo and behold. There were the tweets this morning. Last night, in darkness, there was Sean Spicer being chased around the lawn of the White House.
In the bushes.
How deliberate is this? I mean, is this a
well
grievous?
planned, David.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not deliberate, and that's the thing I think that we have to keep reminding ourselves about Donald Trump. Is he's very visceral. He operates from the seat of his pants. He is not a strategic, long-term thinker. As I noted in my column today, I think he's driven by two twin impulses: self-aggrandizement and self-preservation. And firing James Comey is all about self-preservation. He clearly was disturbed by how the investigation was progressing. And per what Megan said about Comey asking for resources last week, also remember that yesterday a grand jury issued subpoenas to some of Michael Flynn's business associates for their business records.
In Virginia, right?
Yeah, and that was just hours before Comey got canned.
And I think that one thing that is really fascinating about this is, had he done this at the outset, it would not have been surprising. James Comey is a controversial character. He did have serious detractors on both sides of the aisle, particularly among Democrats. And that is what is so amazing about this as well, is, as Eli said, when he moved forward with this investigation, he had put himself in a position that you thought was politically untouchable. And then to fire him now, it's an own goal of catastrophic and baffling proportions.
Eli, let me ask you lastly here in the time we have left about that nugget of news in the letter that we got from the President of the United States to James Comey, saying that he was grateful for the 3 times the now former director of the FBI told him he was not under investigation. What's the course of action here following up on that single sentence in that letter?
Well, 2 scenarios. It could be that Donald Trump is making it up, and that never happened. The other scenario is it's true, and that raises another question, which is, when Comey announced or confirmed that there was an ongoing counterintelligence probe into the Trump campaign in Russia, why did he withhold, or to use the Comey verb, conceal, the information that he had told the president he was not a target of that investigation? So, you know, it depends on sort of how it breaks. I don't want to just assume that it's true, but I'd heard this, by the way, from other Republicans who were extremely frustrated from that original Comey hearing from 6 weeks ago, and I'd heard it from other White House officials, and, you know, there was a flurry of stories about 2 months ago along those lines as well. So, you know, that's another strike against Comey if it's true, but then again, let's not assume anything until we check it, right?